Everybody get enough to eat?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything to write with? It would be a useful thing now that you passed your forks on. Okay, so I'm Howard Tullman, and I'm going to talk about, as I turn on my clicker, about starting a business. It turns out to be a fortuitous coincidence. Here's a little bit about just how challenging this is. You guys, just by showing up here, have made a fairly important step. Most people don't even get to the starting line, so it's good that you're here. It's interesting also over the course of 20, 30, 40 years, it turns out that there's not very much that's predictive in terms of this whole process. So it's an open field. It doesn't help to have a PhD. It doesn't help to be just about anything. It just it helps to put your head down and work your butt off. So, and as you heard before, not everybody starts out hoping to rule the world, but this is, in case you don't know, this is the original St. Walton's store. So let me talk about entrepreneurs for a couple of seconds. It's pretty clear that if we knew how hard it was and how long it was, we would maybe not start. So self-delusion is a very powerful competitive advantage. And playing it safe doesn't work either. The job is really to push it and to do it as fiercely and as aggressively as you can. It turns out it's really hard, and it takes a tremendous amount of perseverance and sort of just the pure desire to want to make something different, to change things, to make things better. And there's a lot of anxiety associated with it. You've jumped in a way, you've left your day job, maybe have a family you're supporting, you have other employees who are sort of looking to you. And so we all worry, but the nice thing about entrepreneurs is across the board, they have two strategies. One is, as I said, they put their head down and they work really hard. The second one is something that you sort of know if you're an athlete, and that is that the more concentrated, the more focused you are on the task, the more you really sort of put yourself in there. You lose track of all these other little obstacles, these things, people telling you you can't do it, all of that kind of stuff. Sort of goes by the boards. So, you need to want it. And here's a few things that we sort of know. We know that you need to sort of like being alone. It's pretty lonely being on top. It's not crowded, but it's pretty lonely. You have to want to sort of build something and understand that you're going to be responsible for people in addition to yourself. There are no sort of guidelines. There's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of sort of stress. And moving forward is really important. It's very easy in this context to get distracted. And one of the really critical things is to sort of ask yourself all the time, is what I'm doing right now really moving the ball forward? If not, you're stuck with this issue of opportunity cost. You have scarce resources, you have scarce time. So either you do it and keep moving forward, or you just won't be successful. At the bottom here, I don't know if everybody can see it, but it says that of all the things involved here, pain and risk and being afraid and stuff, there's no real reference to risk, and that's because, again, by and large, entrepreneurs are sure that they're going to do it. So they don't think it's risky. They just think it's going to happen. And that's pretty much the attitude you need to have in order to put up with it. Entrepreneurs are focused on goals and clearly sort of badge-oriented. They take responsibility for what they're doing. They don't like paperwork. They have a tremendous amount of energy, a lot of imagination, and they don't take no for an answer. This doesn't mean that you're a complete obnoxious asshole. It just means that you keep asking. It's okay. And it's an interesting thing, but in order to do this, it's sort of a contagious thing. You really have to not only be optimistic and believe in it, but you have to figure out how to share that, because people don't really care where they're headed. They just don't want to go there alone. They want to go with somebody who has an idea of what's going on. And so being a leader is a lot about firing up the troops and exciting people and sort of selling not just your business opportunity, but selling yourself. And that's a significant part of it. you also have to love the process, okay? If you don't really like work, this is not a good thing, okay? And it's messy. It's not organized or structured, and you don't have anything in the way of particular clarity. So you really have to like to sort of mix it up. And the other thing is you have to like to be completely neurotic. And this is one of my favorite sort of quotes is that being a pilot is like hours of boredom and seconds of terror, right? So that's a little bit of what we're talking about here too. You really have to understand that there are competition, there are people constantly running up your back, there are people who are knocking you off 30 seconds after you introduce a new anything. Somebody is out there doing it cheaper, faster, more efficiently. That's how the game goes. So it's a constant arms race, and you sign up for it and you never stop, basically. Now, there are different kinds of entrepreneurs, okay? There are people who just want to have a business and not a big business, or a business that's going to change things, or a business that's going to be all-consuming. That's okay, but it's really important sort of to figure out where you think you want to be on the spectrum, because every one of those moves to the right is a degree. It's a degree of pain, it's a degree of time, it's a degree of stress. And if you really want to make it all the way to the far end of this curve, you're signing up for something that is really, really difficult and challenging. What does it take? Basically, a few things. Chutzpah, which is basically a very simple proposition. It's French, if you don't know. Anyway, if you don't shoot for the top, if you don't ask for the best seat in the house, you can be assured of two things. You're not going to get it, and someone else will. Michael Jordan, between all of his other things, always said that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You have to go for it. That's number one. You might as well, go and be number one, because there's no real second place. Second place, there's a winner, and then second place is called loser. Okay? People will tell you a million reasons why you can't do it. That's okay. That they can't do it. That may be the case. But the fact that they couldn't do it, or they don't think it's going to be easy, that's great. Okay? That's why they're not doing it, and that's why you're doing it. So very important. This is a little hard to read, but this was developed by Sal Khan, and it's a really powerful thing. And also, if any of you have read about Malcolm Gladwell and the idea that it takes about 10,000 hours to do anything well, or to really become proficient, that's what this is about. I mean, everything about being an entrepreneur is about iteration and getting a little bit better, and a little bit better all the time. Anytime you rest, as I said, somebody is going to be out there running up your rear end. So, here's the deal. It's not really about super talent. It's not really about brilliance. It's about hard work. And it turns out that as often as not, the people who actually build these businesses aren't necessarily the brightest person, but they're the person who never gave up and the person who hung in there the longest. One of our expressions around here is just, we don't have to outsmart everybody. We just have to outwork them. And that's something that we do. This says that you get lucky, but only after you work about 90 hours a week. Now, this is sort of a sensitive subject for me, so I'm going to take a minute to explain a little bit about math. I ran marathons for like 1 trillion years. And if you were a true marathoner, you didn't say something like, my best time was around 3 hours and 20 minutes or something like that, around. Because you knew that every fucking step and every second in that last mile or two was pain, right? So you knew it to the second, right? So when people say, I work really hard, I work 90 hours a week, here's a flash, okay? This is what 90 hours a week looks like, okay? It looks like you get to go to the bathroom only rarely and only under the most extreme of circumstances. So people who talk about working hard don't really understand what this game is about. But if you want to work 90 or 100 hours, big time, big job, no time for much of anything else, okay? That's the commitment, that's what makes for success. And I don't think it gets easier. This is another sort of unfortunate thing, right? Unless you don't give a shit, okay? If you don't care, then it's fine. You know, you can go home at 5 and you can sort of phone it in. You know, you can quit without leaving, you know, but if you do care, there's basically no finish line because innovation and growing and improving your business is an all the time deal. And customers get this too, because whatever was fabulous yesterday, today the customers want more, they want better. It's a constant, you know, process as well. I like to say that, you know, this process of innovation is what takes your ideas and turns them into invoices. That sounds a little, you know, like businessy, but here's a flash. If you don't make money, if you don't develop something that people want to buy, it's great, you know, to be sort of creating, you know, advanced software for your navel, but it's not a living, right? So the idea is, as Mark Zuckerberg says, constant change, nothing stands still, nothing is the future for more than just a very few minutes, and that's a process. Now here's some good news, okay? I want you to be entirely depressed. So in the old days, you know, not so long ago, before technology was basically cheap, we had to choose. And today, what's really great is that you can actually be good and fast, and you can create inexpensive products quickly, and that's a big difference. And you don't have to say, I want to do part of the story. I want to make it, but it's going to be ugly, or I want to do it, but it's going to be buggy. You can actually do it all. And you know, one of the parts of this is understanding that if you're making trade-offs, if you're making compromises, it probably means that you were lazy. It probably means that you didn't spend enough time thinking about creative outcomes and thinking about how the stuff becomes possible. If you do, you discover that you can have it all. It sounds crazy, but it actually works like that. So, a couple of things, a couple of tests for what we look for when we fund businesses. There is, in fact, an infinite demand for the unavailable. Customers will tell you all the time, if it was only blue, if it was only Wednesday, I would have bought a shitload, right? So you want to have a real product or a service. You want to address a real source of, you know, importance. And here's the test, really. Does it save somebody time or money? Does it increase their productivity? And the last thing, the thing that's new, the thing that really is sort of the advent of post-Facebook worlds, is that if you change somebody's behavior, you can do that by changing their status. We always knew that status mattered. What we never knew until very recently was that you could confer it on other people, you could share it, you could measure it. And this is a big deal. This is a new entire avenue for the creation of incentives and businesses and opportunities. And that never existed until we had this sort of the world of the internet, where we went from the old internet, pre-Facebook, which was about anonymity and links, to the new internet, which is all about people and all about connecting people and having very powerful tools that permit that entire process. You know, the second part of this is that you need to really suss out what the customers are looking for. You know, I think that it's great to talk about lean startups. You'll hear a bunch of that in the course of this weekend. I think that MVP is okay. I think MVA is actually more important, which is, you know, minimum viable audience, because the startup actually needs customers. Okay, money is good, product is good. If you don't have customers, you sort of, you know, a good example would be, you know, sort of wetting your pants in a dark suit. It gives you a warm feeling, but nobody else notices. So I don't think you want to do that. I don't think you want to do that. Anyway, so why do concepts fail? Okay? They fail for, you know, some pretty obvious reasons. You missed what the customers wanted. You're trying to change user behavior too aggressively, too easy to knock off. All of these things, and I'll share these with you so you don't have to try to write this down. But so concepts, you know, have to really be on the money. And then software is even more challenging. Software is really complicated, and you know, we can have inexpensive solutions, but we can't have sustainably inexpensive solutions. It takes time, and you're constantly building. You also have to figure out how to get these things into the market. This is not easy. And virtually every business plan that we see and every business that we've seen fail we have a pretty clear measurement that tells us which of these different factors and which of these different vectors and dimensions they just didn't think through. So, I offer this to you because it's a good test. It's something you should be asking yourself about whatever your idea is, whatever your business is, whatever you want to sort of build and bring to the market. Here's some stats that are interesting about why businesses don't make it, okay? First, you have to understand it takes a long time. And as I said when we started, if we knew how long or how painful it was going to be, it's not clear that we would have started. But it takes a long time. Your revenues are rarely there. Your costs are way more. And there's a very, very high failure rate. But that's okay, because today the cost of trying things is a fraction of what it used to be. And the trick in all of this stuff is to fail fast and move on and do something else. Businesses also fail because they sort of get sucked into the 11 people who like their product. And that doesn't really sustain a business, okay? So you need to understand penetration, you need to understand how to really make something stick. And if you can make a business stick, you're in a much different position. So think of this as sort of the slinky. I mean, most of you weren't born when the slinky was retired, but the slinky is this thing that goes down the steps and it works on momentum, and basically that's how the world works. You're starving, and one day you've got more business than you can take care of. So that's a good problem to have, but it's a problem that you need to prepare for. One of the failings that an awful lot of businesses make is they don't understand that success costs way more than failure. And so when that stuff starts to materialize, you need to have the resources, you need to have the capital in order to do that when the bell finally starts to ring. Talking about business plans, and I don't want to spend a huge amount of time, but in our film business, we always say that the screenplay is never the movie that ends up, but it's what gets the movie made. It's the roadmap. So you need to have a business plan, but you don't need to have a plan that's like a weight around your neck, because if you're doing the same thing that you thought you were going to be doing a year from now, it probably means you haven't learned a whole lot of anything. And so the idea of a business plan as a tool and as a guide is really important. As a sort of gospel, never makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to quickly run through the 4 sort of components of this process. And this is a chart of what it takes to get funded, what it takes to attract capital, what it takes to be successful. And it's a little hard to read the parens, but here's a tip, okay? All of these have an E, and the E stands for entrepreneur. And that's the bottom line, okay? Because there are other considerations, but ultimately the game is played in a really simple way. Investors bet on you. You got to sell yourself, you got to be convincing, they have to believe in you. It's all about the management. Okay, the market is important, product, fit, all those things are fine. But ultimately, it's on you and it's about you. And they have to believe that this is the most important thing going and that you're the person who's going to be able to deliver that. So, with respect to just the process, I want to take you through how we look at these things in pretty short order. So, the first question that you need to ask yourself is, how do you get out? Okay, people actually care about this. People actually care about getting their money back. Friends and family don't care because they don't understand they're going to lose their money. Okay, so they just sort of think that the sky's the limit and everything's going to be hunky-dory. Anybody who's been to that movie before understands that A, the worst money you can take is friends and family, and B, they don't have a clue as to what's going on. But here's how you get out. There's really only 4 ways. Okay, you get out by going public. That's once in a trillion. You get out by being bought. That's a little more frequent. And it's particularly frequent today when you're talking to developers and you're talking about apps. Because very few apps are businesses. They're great bolt-ons. They're great extensions. They're great to find a big partner that can take you to market or that you can ride along with or that can help you get out there. But they're not businesses. And so acquisition is a very significant channel in terms of that. And then lastly, if you're ridiculously lucky and you make $1 zillion, you can buy out your investors. And then the fourth category, of course, is that you fail. But by and large, when you think today about starting a business, you want to build to be bought. This is pretty much a safe plan. Okay? If you over-raise capital, it's going to be very difficult to be bought because you won't get the kind of return early on that your investors are going to be looking for, so they're not going to be very happy. But it's an entire process, and you need to understand, is there a big market? Are there, number two here, are there entrenched competitors? Some businesses are easy. Some businesses are virtually impossible. It's virtually impossible these days to launch a food product for a lot of different reasons. You know, it's hard to get your way into certain businesses that are dominated by distribution. But this whole thing is a process that actually you can do a lot more thinking and planning before you start down this path, because that's how you save a lot of time. That's how you avoid a tremendous number of mistakes and things like that. You know, some markets are winner-take-all markets. Almost all technology businesses can support one, maybe two platforms. And then by the time you're number 3 or number 4, well, let's say you're the Windows phone. Okay, so you know, you're a brick, right? But the you know, and I love Microsoft. And you can think about it. But the idea of understanding the market, again, that tells you that if there's only going to be 2 finalists or 2 people that continue and remain in the market, then you better have a strategy to be partnering with them, acquired by one of them, or at least stay out of their way so that they don't trample you. And very often, by the way, the other way around this is if a market is fundamentally dominated, there's usually a niche. You know, we see all the time people who say, all right, I get that this whole business is for the big guys, but here's an opportunity, here's a zillion opportunities, and I can exploit those portions. I can attack those kinds of situations. Or you can compete in different ways, and there's a lot of examples of that. So with respect to the market, there's a whole set of tests. It's got to be big. It's got to have pain. It's got to be accessible. You've got to be able to compete with the people in the market. That's number 1. And how do you figure this out? Okay, this is really what I want to mostly share with you. Is for each of these things, it's easy to list. It's hard to figure out what's the process. Okay, and the process is you get out there and you do a lot of legwork. That's the only way you learn this stuff. You don't learn it in books. You don't learn it, from a friend. You don't learn it sort of by osmosis. You talk to customers. You talk to people who are in the marketplace. You do some testing and some surveying. All of this is designed to try and figure out whether it's a viable market for you. And it's really significant. And then number 4 here is you need to understand. We just have been dealing with a lot of book businesses and a lot of books in the education market business. And what I think a lot of people don't understand is there's essentially, in a school year, there's essentially 2 entry points, and the rest of the time you can suck wit, right? So, if you don't understand that, and if you haven't figured out how to carry and sustain your business between these selling opportunities, you're never going to be around long enough to reach any kind of critical mass or accumulate any kind of customer base. Management, number 2. Are they qualified? Now, a lot of people in this room, would not say that they have specific domain expertise about whatever it is. Okay, that's okay. But you need to find somebody who does. You need to find somebody to give you at least enough credibility so somebody will take you seriously and get you in the door. So you need to know something about what you're setting out to do or change. You need to have somebody with the skills to do that. You have to be able to evaluate the process and sell your story. And then lastly, you have to really sign up to do this. And as I said before, it's very tough. Some people are bankable, financeable, and some people will never, ever raise money because they don't understand the process or they're not interested in the process. So this is another part of the equation. And last but not least, there are people that are just rank assholes. And they may be really brilliant, but they're not anybody that people want to do business with, because investing is very much a personal thing. It's very much an intimate thing. And And these are people that you could spend years and years with, and if they like you, they're inclined to give you a little space and a little room, and if they don't like you, you're going to be having a world of problems, very early. Part of what you have to prepare. This is sort of an academic exercise in some respects. You actually have to have a sort of a comprehensive strategy. Just saying I'm going to go out and build something is not going to get you anywhere. Just very quickly, projections, business plans. It's a very complicated process. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, other than to suggest to you that entrepreneurs are crappy accountants. That's why they're entrepreneurs, okay? But every entrepreneur needs to find a business partner. If you're the accelerator, you need to find somebody who can be the brake, somebody who can help you with the finances of the business, somebody you respect enough that they can say no and you don't think that they're a traitor to the cause or being disloyal. Very significant, because when you get to be a grown-up, when you get in front of business investors and you want to move your business forward, they're going to ask you questions not about how excited you are or the first 11 customers that signed up, but questions like gross margins and where you expect the business to be. And here's a flash: you can't wing it. Okay? It actually is math. Okay, so you can't make it up. You have to have some understanding, and worse, you have to have some basis for it. Okay, it would be okay if you could make it up and you didn't then have to explain it and live with it, but that's not how it works. Cash flow, operating. Here's some stuff. Again, very short, very easy. Okay. Here's the test. Ask yourself this. Okay. Have I set up my business? Have I made my pitch? Have I addressed these things that make it easy to say yes? Or have I set it up so that people can blow it apart and pick holes in it to such an amazing extent that it's going nowhere? All right? And this happens all the time. This happens, people come in and say, I want to do this, and they have no reason for anybody to believe that they're going to be successful, and they sort of talk themselves out of the opportunity. So preparation, thinking through what you want to do. It's your life. You only have X number of shots. If you do it right, that's great. If you screw it up, you might get another chance. You might get 2 more chances. But basically, after a couple of tries, they make you go home. So one of the things that we see all the time is that entrepreneurs actually believe there is no such thing as gravity, and that businesses can continue to operate on the hockey stick approach forever. Not a good plan, not a good strategy, not even a good idea to walk in with a straight face and say something like that. Similarly, you need to focus. Okay, it's a very common thing to want to say, there are hundreds of extensions of my business, there are a lot of things I can do, other things, forget it, right? Every single investor in the world is mostly interested in knowing that you're completely focused on doing one thing right first. Then you can do elaborations and extensions and proliferations, all this stuff. But if they think that you're trying to be all things to all people, or you think that your product will serve every market or every kind of demand or solve every problem or deal with every customer, they're not going to take you seriously. And then lastly, we think about technology. We think about a lot of these different things. But here's the bottom line. Every bit of technology in the world eventually becomes a commodity. Every service can be knocked off. Every product can be duplicated. What you can't replace are people, talented, motivated people. And so if you divide your day, if you divide your business, if you divide your energy into any kind of thing across these quadrants, people are the name of the game. People are your ultimate advantage, and people are the most powerful thing that you can assemble if you want to have a successful business. So, thank you very much.